Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Skylar the writer, and this is where I talk about my life as a writer. I don't know why you're surprised. It's like literally in the name. Today we're going to be discussing this essay that's in the New York Times this morning by Gerald Howard. Mr. Howard is a retired book editor and the author of the forthcoming The Insider, Malcolm Cowley, and the Triumph of American Literature. And Mr. Howard, who is not to be confused with Barbara Howard's husband from Abbott Elementary, not the same, Gerald Howard. I assume, I don't know, I could be wrong. No, Barbara's husband's fictional. I know the difference. I am writing both a nonfiction and a fiction book. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm going to put a link in the comments below. I know the New York Times is paywalled. I'm going to put a GIF link so you should still be able to read it, and I highly suggest you do. But the gist of Mr. Howard's essay is those people who are announcing the death of literary fiction are a little too soon. Don't go sounding the death knell yet. Literary fiction is alive and well. And while there are structural challenges to getting published, especially a work of literary merit, it can still be done. And first of all, I just want to sort of talk about the difference between literary fiction and genre fiction for those of you who didn't come from like a BFA or an MFA or a literature program. Strictly speaking, literary fiction is fiction that prioritizes characterization and character development over plot, so it's much more character driven. It prizes artistic merit and over anything, and it's a novel that's trying to say something, that has a pronounced theme that it's grappling with, right? That's an imperfect definition, but it's good enough. It's serviceable for our purpose. Genre fiction is fiction that is written largely for entertainment value. It tends to be more plot driven. You can think of genre fiction, a lot of genre fiction would be sci-fi and fantasy. That's sort of what people immediately jump to, but it's also horror, it's romance, it's Danielle Steele, it's authors like that, Tom Clancy, Stephen King. A lot of his work would fall into genre fiction. Stephen King's an interesting example, though, because I think there's a lot of literary merit to what he writes. And I also think that a lot of genre fiction doubles as literary fiction. I think if you look at the work of Isaac Asimov, for example, it's hard to argue that there is an artistic merit to that, and that Asimov doesn't create really compelling character studies. I think he does. Another author who is extremely controversial and whose politics do not line up with my own in any way, but who I also think is a really good example of this, is Ayn Rand. I think there's a lot of literary merit to Ayn Rand's novels, even though they would certainly fall in the genre sphere, right? So Mr. Howard makes the case that literary fiction is still alive, that it's always going to be here, that those are the stories we go back to. He points to the Iliad, to the Epic of Gilgamesh as, stories we're reading thousands of years later. You can find other examples of stories that we're reading centuries and centuries later, whether it's the works of Shakespeare or Chaucer, whether it's the works of Dickens, whether it's Nathaniel Hawthorne in American literature, or, Herman Melville. He talks about Moby Dick not being a success in its time, points to the fact that William Faulkner wasn't really appreciated until later on in life. In the mid-1940s, many of his books were out of print. So there's also hope for those of us who don't have immediate success, or who don't have any success in our lifetime, that our genius is just ahead of its time, and future generations will appreciate us for the literary masterminds that we are. And so I think there's an important lesson there in just writing what you want. I had a professor / friend of mine in college, when I said I wanted to write literary fiction, sort of recoil in horror and say, why would you want to do that? The money's in genre fiction and young adult and horror and fantasy and mystery and suspense and all of these. And she's not wrong. And I think that's solid advice for somebody who's looking to build a career as a writer. If you're looking to primarily make your money off of writing, I think it probably is a better investment of your time and energy to write sort of bestsellers, things that have mass commercial appeal, if that's what you're going for. If, like a lot of writers, you get into it because you have things that you want to say and you're approaching it really as an art form far more than you are as simple storytelling. And again, this sounds really snotty when you consider that it can be both, and I think that a good literary novel should be a compelling page turner, frankly. I mean, if you, nobody is, look, I'm sorry, nobody's favorite novel is Finnegan's Wake. Like, it's just not. Like, nobody's favorite novel is Finnegan's Wake. So I will not believe you if you tell me that it is. So I think that you can have these you can go too far one way and have these sort of annoying pretensions that you are so genius that you write Finnegan's Wake, which is, in my mind, just completely ridiculous and nonsensical and gibberish, and I don't know. On the other hand, you can write some really compelling, amazing, sort of commercial, successful novels. I look at my bookshelf right now, and there's a lot of commercial fiction up there, and I've enjoyed it, I wouldn't call The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown literary fiction. It doesn't pretend to greatness, but it was a riveting, interesting page-turner, I enjoyed it. I'm looking up there. What else have I got on my bookshelf that I've read? Okay, Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon. That is literary fiction. That is very much a character. That's actually a really good example. That is a character-driven work of literary fiction, but it's also fantasy in a lot of ways. It deals with the supernatural, And so that's an example of a book that can be both. But I'm looking at others and, they're sort of quirky gay romances. Like, I think I might have mentioned this earlier, but Casey McQuiston's, is that her name? Red, White, and Royal Blue. I love that book. It's one of my favorite books. I really enjoyed it. She made bank off of that book before it was a movie, so good for her. But then you have a book like The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Is that her name, Madeline Miller? I think so. Name check me on that if I'm wrong. But, that book is definitely in the fantasy genre. It's pulling very much on the Iliad. It's a retelling of Achilles and Patroclus. But it has literary merit to it, I believe. And so a book can be both. And I think that the lesson that I took from Mr. Howard's essay is to write what you want, because your audience is going to find you. And if your book is as good as you think it is, your audience may find you after you're dead, but it's still going to find you. And he talks about the fact that even though we're sort of weeping over the death of the publishing industry, first of all, this is something that people have been complaining about for 50, 60 years since he started his career in the 1970s. People have been writing the obituary for American publishing and American literature. But he says, quote, "The longest line I found myself in this past summer on Cape Cod, longer even than the one at the Snowy Owl Coffee Shop," which I guess is like a big Cape Cod coffee shop. I don't know. I'm not rich enough to be on Cape Cod. I live in Appalachia. "Was one of the on the first day of the wildly popular book sale at the Brewster Ladies Library, which raises funds for the library. All of us on the checkout line, including many parents and their excited children, were carrying armfuls and shopping bags full of books of all descriptions. If literacy is dying, nobody has told my fellow enthusiasts on that line. And I think that's really true. I think that what we're seeing right now is that I think in a lot of ways it's harder than ever to be a writer, right? Whether you're writing literary fiction or genre fiction, because it's so competitive. But on the other hand, it's easier than ever to be a writer. Not because of AI. Please don't use AI to write your novel. It doesn't have a human soul. Like, that's stupid. I think, Sarah A. Chrisman, who is a writer I really enjoy, who self-publishes historical fiction novels that are not literary fiction by any stretch, and I think I've interviewed Sarah, I've gotten to know Sarah a little, we're not friends, but she's a writer who I've spoken with a few times, not in several years, but, I think she would tell you, like, her books are, I don't want to say, they're unpretentious. They're humble. Her aspirations are to entertain you, maybe educate you on life in 1880s Washington territory, come state. But she's really there to entertain you. But her novels are well researched and they're self-published. She makes a living as a writer. I don't think she's rich by any stretch of the imagination. She doesn't have J.K. Rowling's money, but who does? Not all of us are going to be Stephen King, but she makes a living writing the books that she wants, and they're entertaining. I've read all but the last 2 of the series, and they're on my bookshelf. I'm really excited for the chance to read them this winter. I love her books, and so I read, but I also loved Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead, which is a wonderful retelling of David Copperfield set in the coalfields of southern Appalachia. And that is a literary novel. It won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, but it was also a commercial success. So it can still happen. But even if not, I think just writing what you're passionate about, writing the type of book that you want to read is what matters. And I take great heart from Mr. Howard's essay as a reminder that it can still work and that the death of American publishing may come, but it hasn't come yet. And so there's hope for all of us. And I just want to know what y'all make of this essay. He concludes with, the worst possible thing those of us who care about literature can do is sell it short and put some end date to it. The future is always being written at every moment, and hope and faith and even an irrational belief in literature's primacy in and importance to the human prospect is at the cure for despair. All of the books I mention in this essay survived to see fame and recognition and a kind of permanence against long odds, and that's true. Even the writers who didn't necessarily see it in their lifetimes got to see it. Henry James, who had some career setbacks of his own, Mr. Howard goes on to write, put it best, quote, "We work in the dark. We do what we can. We give what we have. Our doubt is our passion, and our passion is our task. The rest is the madness of art." The madness of art. That's what it's all about. So it's inspiring to not have to, I don't want to think about the commercial viability of my book when I'm writing it. I really don't. I want to say what I want to say. And I think that for a lot of writers, that's where self-publishing might be the way forward. I don't know that self-publishing is the way forward for me. Certainly not for my memoir. I really want that to go through a traditional publisher. I feel like writing and publishing a memoir, self-publishing a memoir, is a bit self-indulgent. That's my own personal view. I'm not here to judge you if that's what you're doing. For me, it just feels like I would feel self-indulgent. I also want a fact checker on my memoir to make sure that, like, I'm getting certain dates are lining up and things like that, because I'm writing, my memoir invariably focuses on a public-facing career as a political writer. So it makes more sense to have an editor that, like, is fact-checking things. But my fiction, I haven't ruled out self-publishing my fantasy series, if that's what it comes to. I haven't ruled that out at all. So I'm not against self-publishing. Sarah A. Chrisman, like I said, self-published her series, and I freaking love it. So I don't have a problem with self-publishing. When I was an undergrad in a creative writing class, I know that self-publishing was seen as, it was said to kill an author's career. You were basically committing authorial suicide, career suicide. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word on YouTube, but I don't really care. I think it's silly, the TikTok speak that we have to use, and I refuse to engage in it. Um, so yeah, that's that. I'm going to ask you to have a conversation in the comments about whether or not you agree with my assessment and Mr. Howard's assessment that American literature is alive and well, and that we should write what we love and understand that our books will eventually find the audience that they were always meant to find. What do you think? All right. While you all do that, I'm going to go ahead and fill you in on what my life has been like these last few days, because I know it's been about a week since I've posted to this channel, and there are reasons for that. I worked last week. Last Monday, I worked all day with an editor on an essay developing an idea for an essay that I was really wanting to write. Only on Tuesday to find out that they were giving it to one of their in-house columnists, which really, really pissed me off. I wasted a day of work. Could have pitched it elsewhere. By that point, I think the interest had passed, and that essay is never going to see the light of day. That's frustrating, but it is a reality. This has happened to me more than once, and I do think that anyone who is especially trying to get into opinion journalism or publishing essays on current affairs, this was on a TV show, of all things. This wasn't even about politics. Well, it was sort of about politics, but it was really more about this TV show and what this TV show can teach us about politics. You know, it got handed off to somebody who was already on the payroll, that they didn't have to pay somebody freelance. And that's just a reality that I don't know a solution to that. Sadly, I really, really don't. That's just the industry. The rest of the week was spent writing the first chapter of my memoir. It is extremely, extremely rough, but I did get it done. And pitching other essays. I have a couple pitches out that I'm waiting to hear back from. One, I'm waiting to hear back just to make sure they have the budget to publish me. So hopefully I'll hear back from that one this week, and if so, then that'll be published in the coming weeks, and I'll share a link with you. Another I haven't heard back from, but I get the feeling that it was the fact that I haven't heard back isn't a rejection just yet. I'm going to give it another week or so. It seemed like they were really taking the long view on that one, so they're probably considering their options. That's an essay I really would like to write, but I admit that my pitch was kind of weak. So the deadline for pitches was coming up, and I had to get it in under the wire, and I didn't have time to brainstorm it the way that I normally would a pitch. So that I'm torn. I think it has potential, and it's an essay I would like to pitch elsewhere, if not here. I really want to get this commission, though, because it pays $1,000. And that's really good for a 1,000-word essay. That's $1 a word. So I want that. I had a breakthrough on the memoir, like I said. I today will probably spend time transcribing my second essay, or my second chapter, the voice memo I left while I was sort of brainstorming that, just because I can't afford the artificial intelligence transcriber right now. I'm dead broke, which brings me to another thing. I'm still applying for writing jobs, but there's nothing out there, so I've also started applying at just random jobs. One that is for a nonprofit. It's sort of journalism related, but it's not really. It's but I'd be good at it, and I think I'd enjoy it. And then another just random places, including a bookstore here in town. You know, as a writer, I've had to sort of swallow my pride and realize that, I was very fortunate that I went for years where writing was paying my bills, but right now it is not. And a friend of mine said it's no different than a jobbing actor taking a barista job between roles, and that's sort of how I'm having to view it right now. I hate that at 39 I can't find work in my chosen field. It's very frustrating, especially after I have had success for many years as a writer, but it is what it is, and I am no better than any other writer, in that, well, I mean, I'm better than a lot of writers. Like, I mean, just as a judge of my own talent, like, I've had a career at it, and a lot of people aspire to what I've had. I've breathed rarefied air, and I've been very blessed. But there are a lot of writers who are just as talented as me who have never had the success that I've had. And there are a lot of writers who are just as talented as me who are currently experiencing the same career frustrations that I am. So, unemployed writers, we are a dime a dozen, and I am no better than any of them. So if that means taking a job as a retail sales assistant, then that's what I'm going to do. I thought about going and getting a corporate job that would drown my soul, and I just can't do it. I don't have the desire to sit behind a desk for 8 hours a day unless I'm spending 8 hours being creative and writing. So that's my life. That's my update. I will probably post later this week about sort of any developments and maybe talk a little bit about process. But that's my update. So I just wanted to talk about this essay. I apologize if this video was a little bit rambly. To be honest, I didn't come on this morning with an idea about what I wanted to say. I just thought it was interesting and wanted to bring it to your attention. So that concludes today's video. I thank you for your time, and go ahead and get to writing because it's not going to write itself. Bye. Oh, it hasn't stopped. All right, get to writing. It's not going to write itself. Bye.